Welcome to the Mentup Lead Up podcast, an essential resource for all small business leaders and their CMACs, consultants, mentors, advisors and coaches. Listen in to what our experts have to say and gain from their tips and ideas. I'm Michelle Estes, founder and CEO of the Mentup Lead Up technique and author of published book In Business With Yourself. You're very welcome to the podcast today.
Welcome to the podcast today. I'm joined by Ellen Gunning, who is a communications expert, entrepreneur, author and educator with over 30 years experience in public relations and media. Ellen was the founder of the Irish Academy of Public Relations in 1992 and is now a leading provider of internationally recognised online PR training with businesses and professionals from across more than 50 countries. Ellen has written 3 books on PR and has presented the weekly radio Mediascope programme on Dublin City FM for over 15 years. Ellen can share the story behind founding the Irish Academy of Public Relations. Ellen, you're really welcome to the podcast today.
Delighted to be with you, Michelle. I feel like a bit of an imposter because most of the last 3 years has been working with my newest business, Metaccoms. But Metaccoms is a sort of natural development in the PR industry anyway, moving from training. So we might talk about that as well.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. I think that's a real move and reflecting sort of where we're all going with AI as well. But let's start. Someone who's guided so many people in PR since 1992. Really, what have you seen changing in that time? And why did you really get into that in the first place?
The changes are absolutely enormous. So I got into education, PR education at the time, because I had studied PR by night with the Institute. And it was the first time that there was an evening course in PR ever. And when I finished it, I realised that, within a few years, that it had very few people, a small capacity for people who were based in Dublin, and there were no PR courses outside of the Dublin area. I had been on the board of the Institute, I'd been on the education, I chaired the Education Council, and I'd actually recommended that as an institute we should offer courses around the country. And they said, no, not really. We're not interested in doing that at this stage. So I formed the Irish Academy. Now, I'm a Dubliner and I'm Dub-centric, but even I thought there were people around the country who wanted to learn more. So literally, that's what got us started. Irish Academy began by teaching courses in University College Dublin, University College Cork, Galway Mayo Institute of Technology as it was then. So we had this kind of triangle in Ireland. We taught public relations, journalism, event management, content creation, video production, anything that fell under the broad handle of communications. And that eventually morphed into distance courses, I think, first, and then online courses. So what we do now is we provide all of our courses online, or we do a huge amount of corporate training. That's become very big business for us. But the online courses basically, I suppose, reflects the changes in the industry as well. People don't have time to devote to every Tuesday and Thursday to being in a place between 7 and 9. The whole nature of online learning is that it allows you to learn at your own pace, in your own time, whenever suits you. And actually, I'm on the board of EDL, which is the European Association of Distance Learning. I'm just back from their conference. I was speaking at it in Copenhagen recently. And we were looking at how that industry is now evolving and how artificial intelligence is changing the world of distance learning.
Wow. So, I mean, clearly since 1992, I'm sure you have seen so many different changes. But just back, I mean, typically of an entrepreneur, Ellen, you saw a gap in the market and you went for it and have been hugely successful in that process, which is, and as you say, bringing it from Dublin onto the world stage. And I know you're a very, very busy person, so, clearly that moves. When we look from 1992 to today, here we are in 2025. And Ellen, the one thing that strikes me in relation to PR is just, of course, so many things now are instant, but the whole voice of PR as well is beginning to change. Even recently, over the last year really, the whole way that people are speaking now and the whole voice is very different.
There have been so many changes in PR. I think one of the biggest changes, and we're probably seeing it evolve at the moment, is the change from doing to strategizing. So what we had when I went into the industry first, or when we began teaching courses, it was really important to train people on how to write a good press release, how to work with photographers and create a visual image, how to find the best people who could do things for you. When I started back 30 odd years ago, we created videos for clients that were 35 minutes long. You just couldn't imagine. That's almost a movie at this stage. You couldn't imagine it now. And I suppose one of the biggest changes that I've seen in PR is that move from doing, which has always generated income for consultancies, but has never really been what their strength was, to now strategizing. So consultancies, I think, now are seeing more and more that that content creation, that press release writing, the videos, all of the podcasts, all of those areas can now be done by AI. And really the value of a consultant is somebody who looks at that vast volume of information that we're all, like, we're drinking from a fire hose. The amount of data that's out there is phenomenal. And if you're advising a client, you're trying to absorb all of that data and say, for your particular communications challenge, for your particular audience, here's how they're moving. This is where it used to be much easier. 30 years ago, you had a more fixed idea of what people of a certain age, from a certain background, who bought a certain product. It was easier to write that persona. Now it's much more difficult because people's lives are influenced globally. So the challenge for PR is to look at all of that data, all of that information, and analyze it from a comms perspective and say more and more, since we all act in a global world, this is how you could or should or shouldn't communicate your message, because it may resonate very well in the United States. It may not resonate in Japan. It may actually cause offense in Germany. Irish people just won't understand it. So it's that big global view of comms that literally, if you put anything onto Facebook or LinkedIn, just to pick two at the moment, you have a global audience. So it's not Irish people looking at your content, it's the world looking at your content. And that's the biggest change, I think. And the challenge then for PR communicators at that very senior level, because I think that's where the business is also going. It's that ability to strategize the communications challenge. And the challenge then is to stay on top of it because it moves so fast. So if I can divert into Metaccoms just a little bit, what Metaccoms does is it's a platform that takes all of that data, effectively verifies it. So we can chuck out the chaff, we just take in the wheat. And then it filters that wheat into 5 verticals: politics, public opinion, economic insights, academic research, and media. And those are the 5 that back 30 odd years ago, when I started in PR, I would have sent a junior to a library to get me information on any new client, pretty much under those 5 verticals. And what PR people are now doing is saying to any client on any issue, well, this is the political voice. This is what's being said in the European Parliament. This is what's being said in the United States Senate. This is what's happening in the Knesset. So this is where politics is moving, because politics generally reflects public opinion. But look separately at public opinion. And if you look at Europe is like, people think of America as it is America, it is a country, it is. But the East Coast is completely different to the West Coast. And both of those are completely different to somewhere like Kentucky. Europe is exactly the same. France, Germany, Poland, Ireland, they have different perspectives on the world. So it's trying to take that political view, then divide down into, so where are people going? Are we ahead of public opinion? Are we behind public opinion? Is there any solid public opinion? Are people exercised by this issue at all, or this particular topic? And then economically, what are the impacts of any change, any new launch? How will it fly? So what are the economic headwinds that are facing the industry? And how do we communicate about that? Because we may well do the headwind, but how do we do it? And then from a media perspective, how is the media reporting, and media very broadly, but how is the media actually reporting this issue? And then what academic research has been done?
Yeah, I mean, strategy, we're all about strategy. So through Ment Up Lead Up as well, we really encourage not only our company owners, but also the people who are advising them to really lift their head and think about that strategy. Instead of being in the business, that they're working on the business and they're thinking in that wider, broader context. So the fact that you're also bringing that into the PR scenario is just sort of sitting really much where we all are at the minute and realizing that there's so much that can be done by other people and so much that can be done through electronically and digitally, that actually the biggest thing that a business owner or an advisor or the leaders of corporates can do is really strategize and think of that vision. Where is it going and how are they, and then what bits and pieces do they need to put together to get there? So I think that's really, really important. And Ellen, I move that into where you talk about strategy. Then the other thing you talk about is that global view. That's a really interesting comment in terms of people are sitting at their kitchen table or in their office or in their living rooms and they're posting on social media. It's absolutely instant. The voice is instant. And as you say, it's going across the world. And I'm not sure, and here's a thought, what do you think? I'm really not sure that people are really grasping that. Perhaps some of the leaders in the corporates are, but is everybody grasping that concept?
I don't think so. I think you're right. I think people believe they're posting to their public, which is who they're targeting. So whether it's a personal post and it's targeting your friends and colleagues, or it's a business post and you're targeting your audience, I don't think they actually realize that there's a much, much wider audience that you're also reaching who may stalk. I mean, stalk in the nicest possible way. There are all kinds of things that pop up on my feed and I think, oh, that's really interesting. And I keep an eye to it next time it pops in, but I wasn't necessarily looking for it. But the other thing is that you've got, like, the world is so open now. There's so much on social media now that you can actually look at what our competitors doing. So competitors globally, what can I learn from them? So let me do the same and look at what they're posting about. What do they think are the key issues? How are they tackling those issues? So strategy, I think, is one of the most important things for any business. I was at a conference in North Virginia, about 2, 3 weeks ago. And they were talking about the fact that really when you look at strategy, it overlays everything. And that the strategy must be, where are we going in the next? It used to be, where are we going in the next 10, 20 years? But the speed of everything is, where will we be in 5 years' time? I spoke with a colleague only yesterday about the PR industry, and he was saying that it's changing so quickly that really nobody knows what will PR look like in 5 years' time. Mm-hmm. I believe it's that strategic communications, because I think all of the content creation will now be done by AI. But he was saying their challenge is, from a comms, an industry point of view, do you then decide, how do you decide to jump? So how do you strategize now for the future so that by the time the future arrives, you're in the right place? And I think that's one of the biggest challenges.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, I think that's a really important point, is thinking about 5 years now is probably what the equivalent of 25 years was 25 years ago, if we think in sort of a digital context.
Absolutely.
So on that note, Metaccoms, your new direction in terms of what you're doing, well, probably not that new, Ellen, if you're working on for a while, but it's really interesting looking at that verification of content, and the work that you're doing in that is actually really important. And I can see just the need for that so much, that you're verifying this vast amount of content and you're doing it in a human way.
I think one of the big challenges is not the amount of information that's out there. There's a huge volume out there. But the big challenge is that with the best will in the world, you ask somebody to research something. and they come back, they go off and they do a Google search, or they ask ChatGPT, or they use any of the tools that are out there at the moment, and not specific to any one of them. And they come back with information and say, here you are, this is the information. And you say, terrific. Are you sure that's accurate? Are you absolutely certain that when you quote something from Harvard, it came from Harvard? And they'd say, yes, of course I am. And you say, fine, show me the link to Harvard, the direct link to that piece. And actually, a colleague was saying to me recently that the biggest time waster in their consultancy is that she insists that everything is checked 3 times to make sure that the information they're issuing on their own behalf or on behalf of a client is accurate. And I think that's your biggest challenge. So if you can, because the likes of ChatGPT, we've all experienced it. I think of ChatGPT like a child. I have no children, but I think of it as a child who doesn't want to disappoint a parent. So the parent says, do you know? And instead of saying, I'm clueless, ChatGPT says, of course I do. Here's the answer. And it does it on the basis that when you realise 3 or 4 days later that that was a complete hallucination and absolutely wrong, it's totally made up, that you'll say, oh, don't do it again.
And I love the analogy.
In my head, that's ChatGPT. So I keep thinking that what I need to do is build in something that says, these are the level of questions that you ask children, and this is when you ask adults, and this is when you ask researchers. So the first barrier, I think, is being able to search for anything and knowing that the source that you're searching is real. So whether you're searching for a media source, that newspaper or that television station or that radio station did actually report that in that way, or that research really did come from Harvard, because we've all read hallucinations about what universities might have done that never actually existed, or that was the actual comment from the politician who was speaking in Parliament. So I think that's a vital first step. So having that, not having that fear, having that confidence that the information I'm accessing is accurate. Now, what is it I want to know, and what is it that the information is telling me?
Well, it's hugely important, hugely important. And I think that, especially for the listeners who are coming from that consultancy, mentoring, advisory, coaching role, I mean, when you're working with clients, and to know that the information that you're providing, in whatever way that it is actually authentic and proper. And there are now, of course, coming out a lot of criticisms of some of these AI information tools, just about that accuracy.
To the point you made earlier about posting and the whole world is watching, the number of people who share posts that they believe to be true is I can't remember the percentage, but it's very high. But they don't share it as fake news. They believe this would be of interest to Michelle. I should share it with her. So if you look at it with an opposite lens, if you're in business and you're posting, and part of your business, part of your interaction on social media should be commenting on what's happening in the world. But if you're going to comment, then the information that you're putting out there must also be accurate. So if you're commenting on something that's happening, the information you're accessing to comment on it should be, what a great idea, I've seen research on this, or I know this is true, because you shouldn't be adding to that fake news or that worry that people have that perhaps your information isn't accurate. I think reputation in terms of your corporate, in terms of your company, in terms of your business, reputation takes years to build up and picoseconds to lose. And if you develop a reputation for whatever reason for posting information which is not accurate, so I thought that was real. I took a decision based on what that person posted because I thought they were an expert in their industry, then you lose your reputation very, very quickly. So it's a critical issue.
That's a really interesting point as well. Absolutely. And when you think about it, in the good old days, in terms of PR was very much about making sure that that reputation was out there in the marketplace and authentic, and it was a proper built-up story in a way. So here we are now, sitting in our living rooms, and as you say, you can just, with one post, you can kill that reputation overnight. It's really interesting. So Ellen, where are we going? Where do we need to be going with PR for ourselves, for our clients? I mean, AI, obviously, but, you know, in terms of that story, the importance of the story, the backstory for the products and services we do, is that all still totally relevant in terms of going forward?
Oh, completely. completely. But people buy from people, and we invest in people's stories. We like to know how you came to develop this product. We like to know if you're a tiny business. I like to know how tiny. And am I helping you in any way? And what are you doing that I can contribute to in some small way? If you look at the massive, if you shrink it back, the massive idea that Donald Trump has about making America great again is to encourage industry to come back onto American soil and to encourage Americans to buy American. And that's what we all do at a smaller level. As businesses, we say, buy from me. I'm a very good business. Here's what we do. I employ a number of people. I want your business. So the story and the telling of the story is vital. I think from a PR point of view, the challenge, the positive, the very big positive, is that AI for small businesses makes it much, much easier to communicate. So there are now all kinds of tools that will write press releases for you, create videos, do podcasts. You can do it all very quickly using AI, and that's brilliant. On the other side, the focus has to be, what do I want the AI, to create for me? What story is it telling? How is it enhancing my reputation? How, at the end of the day, will it bring me or keep me the business that I have? And I think that communications, the challenge is that communications has become much faster. Stand anywhere and look at people scrolling on a phone. That's how long you have to make an impact. Watch the finger, move on, move on.
That's really
that's your gap.
interesting.
That's your gap.
That's your gap. That's your gap. And I mean, I think whenever we all started emailing, we thought, okay, everything's instant. We have to email back now. We have to do something within the day or within the 24 hours. And now, as you say, it's the flick of a thumb, really, in terms of the time we have. That's amazing. And then how do we get our voice heard in that hugely crowded space, I suppose, in some ways? Ellen, it has been, I know we could talk on for a very long time. You have so much knowledge and understanding and experience. Honestly, I think Metaccoms is something that we in the business support industry should be really giving some serious thought to. So thank you for that insight. Quick fire question.
Go for it.
If you had to give a piece of advice to Ellen 30 years ago, what would it now be? What would be that piece of advice 30 years later?
Honestly, don't change a damn thing.
You know, when you are at that stage and you can say that, well, I think that is just fantastic and a real reflection, I think, of the contribution that you're making and continue to make to raising the bar for all of us in relation to how we speak, what we say, and how we're heard, basically.
I think I've just been very lucky, Michelle. I've had great opportunities. I've taken them all, but I haven't regretted any of them. And it's built a very rich life in comms. And you're very flattering. And thank you for the compliments. But honestly, I've just had a ball. I really wouldn't change anything.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, thank you for the insight. And I look forward to seeing what Ellen Gunning is doing in the next year or two as well.
And I'll be stalking Michelle Listos. Listen, thank you for the interview today. I really enjoyed it.
You're very, very welcome.
That's it for this month. Thanks for listening in to Mint Up Lead Up, the podcast for all small business leaders and their CMACs, consultants, mentors, advisors and coaches.